I'm Josh Lieb, and I'm the author of I Am a Genius of Unspeakable Evil, and I Want to Be Your Class President. I say in my book, the mother character is lovable but a complete dimwit. My mother is also lovable but something of a genius. So let me put that right out there. And also makes a mean grilled cheese sandwich. My father is also much more likable, much more likable than the father in the book. It's not autobiographical, and I don't know if that's probably one of the most annoying things any writer gets asked is is it autobiographical, or I see where that came from, and it really doesn't come from anywhere. We're good at making stuff up. Very few things I think that actually end up getting produced are in any way autobiographical. You might pick up a line here or there. I had an uncle, I heard him at the dinner table once say, betting the girls get on me for picking my nose, but I gotta breathe. Now, I couldn't write that. Like, that's beautiful. That's not only funny, it's poetry. It's just perfect. That could be the title of a book. That could be a chapter in a book. It's just fantastic. But generally, when someone comes up to you and says, I've got a great sketch for your show, and a certain person who sells cemetery plots, it's not that interesting, And also, you're not, generally as a writer, you're not interested in stuff unless you think of it yourself. We're selfish that way, and we're narcissists that way. It's like, if I think of it, it's a good idea. If someone else suggests it, I'm probably not going to like it as much. I was never class president. I ran on, I was secretary-treasurer, which is the most useless of all useless student council positions. I mean, it means nothing. We didn't have any money. There was nothing to transcribe. It was just, you're supposed to have a secretary-treasurer, so you did it. And I got that position by insulting the two people who were running against me, so in my speech. The next year I tried to run a kind of a serious campaign for vice president, and that didn't work at all. Today's society, I think, I can't say that we're more money obsessed now than ever, but we probably are. I mean, I haven't been around forever, but it certainly seems like our culture is fixated on cash more than ever, especially in the current economic climate. People want money. People always want money, but people really want money now. I also, it's a standard child's power fantasy of, I'm powerless, I'm weak, but actually I have this superpower. But the superpower of this day and age seems to be $1 billion. You know what? It makes me sound like a horrible, person. I very much enjoy the laughter of children now. But when I was a kid, I remember being very annoyed, not at the laughter of children, but at the fact that they would laugh at anything. There was no discrimination. You could have a very funny joke and everyone would laugh, or somebody would drop a pencil in class, or fart, or drool on himself, and everyone would laugh. And it really annoyed me because it wasn't funny. I'm not a lot like my lead character in the book, but that's definitely something we share in common. We both like peanut butter. We both have dogs named Lollipop. We both love our mothers. That's why we're good boys. That's about it. We're both. He's from Omaha. I used to spend my summers working there at a grocery store, so we're both familiar with Omaha, Nebraska. I've always been a fan of the genre. I never stopped reading it, and when I suddenly found I had time to write a novel, and I was casting about for what I would do, I landed on this one pretty quickly. I suspect that young adult is the genre that casts the widest net right now, actually. I think thanks to the success of Harry Potter, and you've got your Twilights and this and that, it doesn't really, young adult stuff doesn't apply to young adults anymore. No, I would have been devastated if they'd hated it, and they didn't. And it's very tough to get a read on a 12-year-old sometimes. As emotional as they are, they can also be very guarded, or especially a 12-year-old boy, very inexpressive. But no, no. I came up with the title, and I said, that'll make a good title, and then I figured out the book to go with it. I sat down and started writing. I wrote 4 chapters, and I called up my TV agents, and I said, listen, I'm writing a book. Can you help me out? And they said, you have a literary agent you didn't know about, a book agent, a guy named Richard Abate. And so I went over and met with him, and I left him my chapters and my plan for the book. He read it over the weekend and said, yeah, let's go do this. And I started meeting with different publishing houses. It was much too easy. It was great. To get that far was terrific. And the first 4 chapters came to me very easily. And after that, I just had to sit down and start working. Yeah, I wish I had that discipline. At the beginning, I didn't have the conflict because we were on strike. I work at The Daily Show with Jon Stewart, and we were on strike for about 3 months, a year and a half ago. And I sold the book while we were on strike. So initially, I had all the time in the world. And then I was back at work, getting my gears back together. I worked at night. I worked weekends. I worked every holiday. I attempted a few times to be that guy, that Larry McMurtry, who gets up at 4:30 and writes for 3 hours and then can spend the rest of his day doing whatever, but I couldn't do it. There was nothing too difficult. I hesitate to say that because I'm a professional writer, so I'm used to writing. It wasn't, I didn't get stumped anywhere, and it was more interesting. I thought it would be a little harder than it was because I'd never written a book before, but I was certainly familiar with the form. I was like, I kind of knew the book I wanted to write. The toughest part's really because I'd never written anything quite this all by myself before. Something this big with no collaboration whatsoever. What was giving it to my editors and saying, what do you think? Political comedy is just as easy now as it was during the Bush years. It's still, it's a different cast of characters, but they've got all the same foibles. Personally, speaking for myself, I certainly like and trust our president now more than I did our previous one, but he makes plenty of goofs. I certainly don't approve of everything he does, and there's a cast of characters in Washington right now that are absolutely as hilarious as anyone who was there during the Bush years. We're always looking to keep it fresh. And that's not so much because we're scared we're going to lose the audience. It's more we don't want to lose our own interest. You do the show 4 days a week, however many weeks a year, you can get bored by doing it. So we have to keep making it exciting for ourselves. So there's absolutely... There's that, and it's like, let's try something new, even though it might be hard. And there's also, it's a group of very competitive, funny people, and we like to make each other laugh. So, we know what a standard show could be, and we're always trying to break out of that just so we can impress each other. Absolutely not. No, the hardest part for me in a work environment is collaboration. That's a struggle I've always had, and I love my coworkers, and I love bouncing ideas around with them. But I really enjoy pure writing, just sitting and writing by myself. And every show is different. This is the most collaborative environment I've ever been in. I used to write at a TV show called NewsRadio, where it was very different. We didn't have any sort of big table or anything where ideas were bounced around. We really, you'd come up with a script idea and you'd go off and write it. You need to hand it to the next guy up the food chain, and he would rewrite it. It was as pure a writing experience as you can get in sort of the TV world. The main difference between the two is just the immediacy. The Daily Show, the news hits, and we get to take care of it that night. The Simpsons, such a strange animal, and a wonderful animal, but a strange one. You would be writing for something that wouldn't air for 9 months to a year. And still people would go, wow, how did you get that reference, so quickly? And you know, frequently it would seem like the show was prescient. I enjoyed The Simpsons, but I tell you what, I like the immediacy of The Daily Show more. It's frustrating to write something and then not see the finished product for a year. With The Daily Show, it's like you're really putting on a show. You know, I'm Mickey Rooney. You know, I'm writing a script, and that night it goes live. And if it's terrible, well, we'll do another show tomorrow night. Oh, absolutely. We're not so different from everybody else. It's not like I'm particularly funny in this interview anyway, so, you know, we don't always have to be funny. How's that? You, I think we can be just as adequate at managing people as others. And you know, and look, it's all management skills that go into our wheelhouse. It's, okay, I read a script, this isn't funny, this is what you need to do, boop, boop, boop. If I were an accountant, I'd be able to point out where the numbers didn't add up. You know, if I'm watching a montage and this doesn't go together quite right, you know, as someone who is a professional, is a comedy professional, I can point out what's going to work better. No, I tell you what, everyone at the show is so nice and so shockingly competent that it's not a real problem. I've been in situations where there have been people who are difficult or people you just didn't want to be around, people you had to manage more heavily. There's nothing like that there. And I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that it's such a fast-moving machine. Anyone who acts as any sort of sand in the gears gets spit out pretty quickly. My son, I have a little boy, a little baby. I find him very exciting. He's teething now. It's all, you know, it's all very boring and predictable, but you know, it's pretty exciting for me. I'm not. I can't say I'm excited by any particular new TV show or books or any political development. I'm fascinated by what's going on out there, but nothing's exciting me quite like having a little boy. So I am definitely a mammal. It's still strictly education, and one of the reasons I would also write for a young audience is I don't think there's anything better a child can do than read. If we can get our children to read, you know, we're set. And I probably think that because I'm a reader, but I do think that's, you know, necessary for an intelligent child and for a flourishing democracy. Again, you know, it was several years ago when I was last interviewed by Big Think. Nothing has changed in our education system. I don't even remember what we talked about, but it's the same problem that we talked about then. Everyone talks about fixing our schools, and nobody does anything. There's actually an exciting charter school. I really don't know much about it out in one of the boroughs here, where they are paying every teacher $100,000, which was actually an idea I had several years ago, and I'm very curious to hear how that goes over, because I think the number one thing we can do is put, look, Oliver in the book, probably the main reason he hates school, besides the fact that he's smarter than everybody, is he has no respect for his teachers. You know, some of these teachers are petty tyrants. Most teachers are great people, but anyone who's been to school, which is all of us, knows you get your petty tyrants, you get your dim bulbs, you get your narcissists. I think, you know, if I just know too many, I knew too many really smart, interesting people in college who would have loved to have gone into teaching because they love going to school if they thought they could have supported their families doing it. Yeah, no, I've made any number of mistakes. In my career, I think one thing you don't realize, I had success, you know, early on, and you know, I attained some rather exalted positions pretty quickly. And in entertainment, and I don't know if it's as true in other fields, but you know, there's a quantity called heat, and if people think you're the hot thing, then they are very eager to work with you. But the heat does dissipate, and it dissipates quickly. And so because I sort of jumped into the game with a great deal of heat. I thought I would have it eternally. And I spent about 5 years at a show called NewsRadio and really burnt myself out. There was no more exhausting show in the history of television. And when I was done with it, I said, I'm going to take a year off from TV. I'm going to, I have some script ideas I want to write, but I'm just going to keep away from this. Which was great psychologically, but I did not realize how quickly Josh Lieb, young man on the rise, could be, oh yeah, that guy. I had to learn to strike while the iron's hot, and it's a lot tougher to get your name out there again once you've let the heat dissipate. You just have to write. You just have to. Yes, you just have to write. That is, if you want to be a writer. If you want to go into another aspect of entertainment, do whatever that is. If if you want to be a director, direct, or collaborate with someone on something. But if you want to be me, you just write. You just write. You keep writing. You keep submitting. You get better and better at it. There's no other way at it, and you keep pushing ahead, and eventually someone will read your stuff. And also, my other advice would be for someone who wants to go into this business is don't do it if there's anything else you can do. And I sincerely mean that. If there's anything else you can do, don't do it, because this is really only a job for people who kind of are stuck in it. It seems exciting, but it's also it's aggravating and wearying. And I think you're probably not very good at it. We don't get a lot of Renaissance men. We get people with who are very good at writing and then have some interesting hobbies, but we're all a bit of idiot savants. Like, this is the one thing we're good at, so we just keep at it. Because not just the aggravation of actually getting the process, not just the aggravation of the process, not just the frustration of actually getting something made, but also the fact that so many people are trying to do it. The competition is so fierce, and you really are one of a billion sperm, going at that egg that is a job, and it's too competitive. And I'm sure I know there are tons of very talented writers out there, and actors, and singers, and everything else who won't get their break. Who are having a tough time in their 20s and watching less talented people rise above them. And I think if they keep pushing at it, eventually they'll find their niche. It might not be the one they wanted, but it's a very frustrating career path. Even in success, there's frustration. It's so hard because of the collaborative part of it. And because of the money and the effort that goes into it, it's so hard to get. Here's my vision, and to actually get that made is, unless you're Bill Gates and you own your own studio, it's not going to happen like you think it is. I don't know quite the answer to that. I think merit is enough if you keep pushing and pushing and pushing. You might not get the break you wanted. I think the breaks eventually come. And I think the largest break you have is perseverance. If you have that quality, eventually you will break through. But it can be very rough, especially now, and actually, especially now in the field of comedy writing. Jobs are drying up. There's less and less scripted comedy out there right now, or in scripted television in general. The business is in a bit of a crisis. If you can be a lawyer, and you can be happy being a lawyer, be a lawyer, please. Like, you'll do yourself a favor. It's cheaper to make reality shows, which are very entertaining, and I think they're coming back. Everything's on a pendulum. You can only entertain people with the standard reality format so much, and people like stories. They really do. People like sitcoms. People like Friends. So I think the pendulum is swinging back, but it's tremendously expensive to hire a staff of writers, to hire a bunch of actors and a top-rate crew and make something that looks like it should be on television for television. It's really easy to get a video camera and videotape someone eating bugs. Boy, I don't know if I ever thought about that before. My heroes. Mm, I like, as far as writers go, I like Charles Dickens and Daniel M. Pinkwater. Um, I like Casey Jones, although he was only kind of real. But I like that perseverance. I like the person who goes down with the ship in an attempt to save everyone else. Uh, I like Brooks Robinson, even though I never got to see him play, except on videotapes. But I was a big Orioles fan growing up. Um, I could list a lot of authors I like and people I admire, but I don't know if I'd call them heroes. Uh, I just don't know anything about them. I don't know if Ellen Raskin is a hero of mine. I know I like her books, but she could be an awful person for all I know. I think she's probably dead now. I like Louise Fitzhugh. Um, I like someone who lives that sort of, who dares to live that kind of an unconventional life and write that well. So I'll put her down as a hero. I don't know, who's your hero? What is love? Uh, I think you're gonna. I'm not sure what answer you're gonna get today, and I think that answer is gonna change whatever day you ask me. I'm feeling. I've got a new baby. I've got a wife I love, so I'm going to be, I think, fairly non-cynical today. I could say it was some weird narcissistic reflection, of the qualities we see in ourselves and in the other person. I might love my baby because he looks like me, but I don't. I don't know. I'm not sure if there is actually a thing called love. I am not necessarily a doubter in the spiritual realm, but I don't think there's a particular quantifiable thing called love, and I don't even think there's necessarily a brain chemical called love. I think it's attachment. It's need. Love is needing someone in order to feel complete, and yeah, it's attachment. Say it's addiction in a way, but your life would not be your life without that person in it. Pardon me. And when you lose that person, you have to make a tremendous adjustment. So yeah, it's a form of addiction, but there's no dividing line necessarily between love and like, or love and straight affection. But I would call it an emotional addiction. I was definitely the wise guy. I was definitely full of beans, piss and vinegar, all that. I was always making jokes. You know, complete jackass. And I was always a short kid too, which I think some of that. I feel like a lot of times the short kid, the kid who waits a while to grow, overcompensates with his jokes. Separately, I also knew I was going to be a writer, but I didn't know I was going to be a comic writer. They were two separate things. I always loved reading, and I always had a talent for writing. I knew this is what I can do. I was never really excited by any other career option. I never thought, oh, gee, how cool would it be to be a lawyer or a cowboy, or what do people think of as career options? I don't even know. Yeah, I never got too excited by that. I always wanted to be a writer, and my heroes were writers. There's heroes. My heroes were Walker Percy and Hemingway and Fitzgerald, and these were people I wanted to be. This was a life I wanted to emulate. But I never thought I'd be a comic writer. I thought I'd be a serious writer. I thought I was a poet. I was always writing as a teenager, which it's funny because I think there's nothing that annoys me now more than children who write, or precocity as a writer. Like I feel like, leave it be. You'll get to it eventually. But at the time, I knew I wanted to write, and I was sort of constantly writing for myself. The two, the Weisenheimer side and the literary side came together when I went to Harvard and I joined the Lampoon. And which is the comic magazine there. And I had no real plan going in there. It's just I was a funny guy, and I liked to write. It seemed like the right place to go. And it was also a time where when I was 16, I thought, I'm Baudelaire, man. I'm gonna write poetry, and then I'm 19. I'm like, oh, I need to make a living. I need a job. And several Lampoon graduates had already gone into the world of television and movies, and Doug Kenny, there's a hero, fantastic writer. And so I said, oh, well, okay, I can do this. I knew I could write. I knew I could write funny. I said, and I certainly knew television. I was like, this is a job for me. And that's when that happened. Nothing elaborate. I was more the insult comic, and not witty insults either. A lot of your mother jokes. That's still my stock in trade because they're really funny. Pranks. No, I remember. One time I coated my sister's room. Everything with talcum powder, but that wasn't a prank. That was just kind of, oh, this is an experiment. Let's see what her room would look like if talcum powder was inside every single crevice of the room, and I got in a lot of trouble for that. The pranks I do tend to be a little more theoretical. I remember one time I was back at college after graduation for one reason or another, and a friend of mine from college was going to be there, and the sandwich shop down the street from where we lived had closed, I knew, and they turned it into a sunglass hut, which what could be worse? It was one of the last places a kid at Harvard could afford to buy a sandwich, and now it was just a place for tourists to buy sunglasses. It was Elsie's, exactly. So you've been there, and it's gone now. And so I said to my friend Scott, he said, he said, let's grab lunch. I was like, let's go to Elsie's. He said, sure, because I thought maybe if we walked there and he thought it was still there, it would still be there, but it wasn't still there. So he got mad at me. First, let me address Bob Mankoff. I could write that every day, and so you tell Bob Mankoff, no big deal. I have lots of cartoon ideas, and I don't see what he's bitching about. Actually, and also New Yorker cartoonists, what, they write one like once every 3 years or something, right? Big deal. It's like they're one sentence apiece. Give me a break. For a while, I can't draw at all, but I was trying to teach myself how to draw. I got a book because I was going to write my own, draw my own cartoons, but then I got lazy, and I really can't draw. So I have a friend, Tom Gamble, out in L.A., who's a wonderful cartoonist, and I sometimes send him suggestions for cartoons, which he never makes. But like I just had, this is a great one. You tell Bob Mankoff, this is a great. There's a man, and he's got a stomach ache. He's very unhappy, and his wife walks in with Al Capone, and he says, "You idiot! I told you to bring home Alka-Seltzer." Like that's a prize-winning cartoon right there. I just thought of that one the other day. Similarly though, and in all seriousness, it's that ability to do it every day, and it's that ability it's not just perseverance. It's talent, and it's treating it like a job. Anytime I hear of a writer who says he's waiting for inspiration, I say, that's not a writer. It is absolutely. It's a job. It's a career. You can not feel like writing. You can be dry as a bone, and you have to sit down and start writing. You can't tolerate something like writer's block, especially in TV. But I suppose if you're when you're writing a book at home, you can give yourself a couple of days like that. But it's being able to dredge it up every day and produce. It's not just this romantic, pure creation. It's a job. I like to drink. I like a tipple, but I also like to stay away from it too. I've had too many wonderful friends who've really hurt themselves with alcohol, and I'd warn against that. No, I don't think. I think creative people, think that their creativity and their bohemian lifestyle, gives them license to be dysfunctional people. It gives them the freedom to drink too much and to be bad at paying their bills and to shave irregularly. And paying your bills and shaving irregularly, can have their downside, but alcohol can have a real downside. It doesn't give you that license, and it doesn't make you more creative. I know people who've been absolutely paralyzed by drink and by other drugs. You do get that romantic notion, like, I want to be Fitzgerald, I want to be insane, and I want to be miserable. When you're young and you're a writer, you want to be miserable. You want to be that tragic figure, the genius taken too soon. You want to be the alcoholic, the suicide. These are the real heroes. The people who grind it out every day and live to be 100. Who wants to be E.L. Doctorow? He's a wonderful writer, but there's no romance there. But you want to be Hunter Thompson. But I think E.L. Doctorow's probably been a better writer longer than Hunter Thompson was. A good writer because he's had more normal habits. I'm not even like a big E.L. Doctorow fan. I just picked him as a long-lived writer. But Hunter Thompson, who, boy, there's not a better political book than Fear and Loathing on the Campaign Trail '72, and there's not a funnier book than Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas. But I mean, anything he wrote in the past 30 years, I would say was probably, largely unreadable. I guess you could get through it, but the spark isn't there anymore, and then that kind of got killed in him, and I think he probably realized that too. But for 20 years there, from the early '60s to 1980 or so, he was great. I don't know if the drugs spurred that creativity. I think it was all of a piece. He was a crazy man, and he wrote like a crazy man, and he lived like a crazy man. But I don't think the drugs made him the crazy writer that he was. Drugs can certainly give you a new perspective, but generally they're stultifying. Marijuana, stultifying. LSD, I guess fascinating when you're 18 years old, kind of a brain killer. I think you have to, we all have our adolescent fantasies, and, I'm going to be this guy, I'm going to be Rimbaud, and blah, 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 but it's not the way to happiness in life, certainly, but it's not the way to great writing. It generally just gets in the way. Actually, you know what? I'm a bit more lyrical when I'm hungover. My poetry's got is a little fleeter. But if I take a sip of alcohol, I can't write. It kills the spark in me. Sure, I've had You know what? It's less writer's block, I think, where I just can't think of something, and more intimidation. It's not just it's not even facing the blank page. It's often when I'm revising something, it's laziness. I'm looking at it and I just don't want to do it. It seems insurmountable. And a journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step. Blah blah blah. But it's really hard to take that single step. So yeah, I wouldn't call it a block. I'd call it inertia. If you know the magnitude of what you're running at, it can be very tough to get up that mountain. You just have to sort of forget about it for a little while and just get started. And then you feel like you're noble. Then you feel like, damn, I did it. Screw that. Like, yeah, I know it's impossible. I'm a goddamn man. I'm going up the fucking hill. Big deal. I think my favorite movie about television writing is North Dallas 40, which is about a football team. And and I wish I remembered it better now. There's this wonderful soliloquy by John Matusek, who's an ex-football player, who playing a football player in the movie, at the end, where he's just he's giving it to one of the coaches, and he says, it's beautiful. He goes, every time we say it's a game, you tell us it's a business, and every time we say it's a business, you tell us it's a game. You know, it can't be both. It's got to be more than just a business. It's got to be a game. It's got to be something we love, and that's kind of it. You can't do this if you're just doing it for the paycheck, and you can't. You have to love what you're doing, but you can't just love what you're doing. You have to treat it like a business. You have to treat it like this is my goddamn job. Somebody's paying me to be here. I'm going to sit down and I'm going to write this. I do. That's another. Okay, that's something else I share with Oliver. And you know, and that's unfair. I have to say it's unfair. I should have reread Fahrenheit 451 before going into it, but I just couldn't bring myself to do it. There's inertia right there. Yeah, that's a book I despise. Ray Bradbury. Here's another example of someone who has that long-lived writing career. Although, you know, in his case, I don't need to be picking a fight with Ray Bradbury, I guess, but I don't know if it's entirely admirable. Like, let me say this: Ray Bradbury, I enjoy a lot of his. You know, I certainly went through a science fiction phase, like a lot of teen boys do. I read a lot of Ray Bradbury and enjoyed quite a bit. I think the Martian Chronicles are some wonderful stuff, and The Illustrated Man. I liked a lot of those stories. And Dandelion Wine, was that it? You know, I did some. And Ray Bradbury, a pretty lyrical fellow, but boy, yeah, Fahrenheit 451 as authorial circle jerk, absolutely. And maybe in the 50s or whenever he wrote it, 1953 or something, the idea of book banning, book burning, you know, seemed a lot more tangible. And you know, in the wake of Nazi Germany and Stalinist purges and McCarthyism, you really thought, boy, they might get rid of books. And obviously banned in Boston, there were books banned, but I mean, an author writing a book about how wonderful books are, preposterous. And books are great. Books aren't everything. I found the dystopia in that book really unconvincing. I certainly found on the similar topic, and you know, a similar dystopia, 1984, much more plausible, and there's a book about limiting thought, limiting language, destroying books, you know, certainly, but it wasn't about books. It was much broader. It actually looked at what it would mean as a society rather than just that the one thing that was saving us from fascism were our books. So no, yeah, it's a bad book. I recommend you read it so that you don't like it, so that you agree with me on it. But you know, I think every kid sort of gets stuck reading it at some point. But you know, what's another Ray Bradbury book I remember hating was Something Wicked This Way Comes. I had to read that one too. And that was another one where it was these charlatans coming in. I shouldn't have read any of him because they did make us read him in school, and I think he was supposed to be wonderful and to set our imaginations on fire. And it's that kind of setting your imagination on fire that I find pretty stultifying, you know, because it's so it makes such a religion of fantasy and of whimsy and of you know, real fantasy and real whimsy and is a lot more grounded and less flowery, I think. You know, it's and not that Lewis Carroll is grounded, but there's a plausibility there. Whereas I think the main word you can use to describe Ray Bradbury's aesthetic sense of when he's reaching for something great is artsy fartsy, and it doesn't do anything. Like Lewis Carroll, there's nothing artsy fartsy about Lewis Carroll, excuse me. Daniel Pinkwater, in no way artsy fartsy. He can write an entire children's story about Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart, private detective, you know, and that is pure whimsy. But you know, there are neither arts nor farts in there. You don't read Something Wicked This Way Comes either. Kids, if your teacher asks, say, I would prefer to read The Last Guru or young adult novel by Daniel M. Pinkwater. No. Look, it's easy to say I don't want to live forever when I haven't quite come to grips with my own mortality yet. You know, I'm in my late 30s. Maybe when I hit 40, I'll go, oh, you know, I really am going to die. I still have enough of, you know, enough youthful vigor in me to believe, to have a hard time comprehending my actual death. But I don't think I want to live forever. Or I certainly wouldn't want to live forever as an old person. And no knock on old people, because they're wonderful, but it seems very hard. I don't want to hobble around for centuries, and it seems, you know, in all the stuff we do when we're young, and we think we are going to live forever, you know, visits us with such a vengeance. You know, you start smoking when you're 15 because you really don't give a damn about your mortality, and you don't think you're ever going to die, or if you do die, you're going to die in a car wreck. You know, you're not going to die of emphysema, and then you're 90 and you die of emphysema, and it's miserable. So, although, and I mean, I don't know. I don't have that devotion. I think, I'm sure your Aubrey de Greys, you know, say, you can live forever. Here's how you do it. You eat 800 calories a day. You never have a cigarette. You drink 1 glass of red wine twice a week. You know, and you know, I don't want to say it's not a life, but it's not my life. And I guess I still got a bit of that romantic jackass in myself who imagines myself larger than life, and does. I do give myself license to misbehave a little, but you know, you do have to. I do enjoy a good steak. My father's family's from Nebraska, and my mother's grandfather was there. Like, I'm tremendously Jewish. I like nothing better than gribnus, which is, you know, fried rendered chicken fat with some onion in it. Like, it's delicious. Like, I can't eat that very often. It will make me sick, but you know, that is a delicacy, and I can eat it and go, wow, you know, 250 years ago, there was a rabbi in Poland who was my great grandfather, who was enjoying the same meal. So yeah, I think when you devote yourself to living forever, you probably divorce yourself from all the previous humanity before you.